she's been waiting to tell her story.
She was never missing. She was hidden. It was a quiet afternoon in Elmswood. The kind of silence that feels unnatural. Like the town itself was holding its breath. 14-year-old Lana Whitmore left home to visit the library. She never came back. The search was frantic. Police, neighbors, even strangers combed through woods, rivers, and abandoned buildings. But there was nothing. No scream. No clue. Just silence. 16 years passed. The case went cold. Lana became a name whispered in fear, a ghost story parents told their kids to keep them close. Then came Gareth, a retired mechanic who bought Lana's old house to renovate and sell. While tearing down a wall behind a dusty bookshelf, he found something strange. A sealed wooden door, bolted shut with rusted nails. It wasn't on the house plans. No one had ever mentioned it. Gareth hesitated, then called a carpenter. The door creaked open. Inside was a small room. No windows. Just a bed, a table, and a pink plastic bracelet lying on the floor. Gareth froze. He called the police. The Lana Whitmore case was reopened. But this time, they weren't just looking for a missing girl. They were hunting someone who had lived among them for 16 years. Detective Marla Jensen had seen her share of cold cases, but this one felt different. The moment she stepped into the sealed room, something shifted. The air was heavy. The silence wasn't just absence. It was memory. The bracelet found on the floor was confirmed to belong to Lana Whitmore. Her father, now in his late 60s, was brought in for questioning. He hadn't lived in the house for over a decade. His eyes, sunken and tired, scanned the room slowly. Then he whispered, "She used to wear that every day." Marla watched him carefully. "Did you ever notice anything strange about the house? Any locked doors? Odd noises?" He shook his head. "No, but my wife. She used to say the walls felt like they were listening." The wife, Lana's mother, had passed away 5 years after the disappearance. Depression, they said. But Marla wondered if it was something else. Neighbors were questioned. Most had moved away. A few remembered the day Lana vanished. One woman, Mrs. Callahan, recalled hearing a scream, but dismissed it as a fox in the woods. "I didn't think much of it," she said, trembling. "I didn't want to think much of it." Marla dug deeper. Old police reports, witness statements. A pattern began to emerge. Small things, overlooked. A broken window never explained. A neighbor's dog that refused to go near the house. A mailman who quit his route without notice. And then there was the basement. Gareth mentioned a strange draft coming from beneath the floorboards. Marla returned with a forensic team. They lifted the boards and found a narrow crawl space. Inside, scraps of fabric, a rusted spoon, and a child's drawing. Stick figures, one with a red X over its face. Marla stared at the drawing. "Someone was down here," she said. And they weren't alone. The case was no longer just about Lana. It was about the house, about the people who lived in it, and the secrets they chose not to see. The discovery of the crawl space changed everything. Detective Marla Jensen requested federal assistance, and within days, 2 FBI agents arrived in Elmswood. Agent Cole Mathers was quiet, methodical. Agent Riley Tran was sharp-eyed and skeptical. Together, they began to reassemble the puzzle that had haunted the town for 16 years. The first step was to re-examine the sealed room. Forensics found faint fingerprints on the inside of the door. Small, likely a child's. The bed had indentations consistent with long-term use. The table bore scratch marks, some forming letters. One word stood out. Stay, Marla stared at it. Was she told to stay? Or was she begging someone not to leave? The agents interviewed Gareth again. He insisted he had no idea the room existed. I bought the house cheap. It was abandoned for years. I just wanted to flip it. But the previous owner, a man named Harold Finch, had vanished from public records. No forwarding address, no death certificate, no trace. Agent Tran dug into property records. Finch had inherited the house from a distant uncle who had died under mysterious circumstances. The uncle's obituary mentioned a reclusive lifestyle and unusual renovations. Meanwhile, Agent Mathers focused on the drawing found in the crawl space. He sent it to a behavioral analyst who noted the red X over the face could indicate fear, rejection, or punishment. The stick figures were spaced unevenly, suggesting isolation. Then came the breakthrough. A retired mailman named Joe Hargrove came forward. He had delivered to the house for years. I used to hear tapping, he said, like someone knocking from inside the walls. I told my supervisor. They said I was imagining things. Joe described seeing a shadow in the upstairs window. Long after the house was supposedly empty. I thought it was a squatter. But now, I'm not so sure. The agents returned to the house with ground-penetrating radar. Beneath the foundation, they found a second hidden chamber. Inside, a mattress, chains, and a journal. The journal was written in shaky handwriting, pages torn, ink smudged. But one entry stood out. Day 472. He says I'm not real, that no one remembers me. But I remember everything. I remember the scream. I remember the silence. Marla closed the journal slowly. She was alive. For at least a year and a half. The investigation was no longer about a disappearance. It was about captivity. About someone who had kept a child hidden in plain sight. And maybe still was. The second hidden chamber was unlike the first. It was colder, darker, and filled with a silence that felt deliberate. The walls were lined with insulation. Soundproofing. Whoever built it didn't want anyone to hear what happened inside. Agent Riley Tran ran her fingers along the wall. This wasn't just hidden. It was designed to disappear. The journal recovered from the chamber was sent to a forensic linguist. The handwriting matched Lana's school records. But the entries were fragmented, often interrupted by drawings, symbols, and what looked like coded messages. One page had a sketch of a door with no handle. Another showed a figure standing behind bars, eyes scratched out. Beneath it, a single word, him. Agent Cole Mathers began reconstructing a timeline. If Lana had been kept here for over a year, someone had to be maintaining the space. Well, bringing food, water, and keeping the room concealed. But no one had ever reported suspicious activity. Marla Jensen returned to the neighborhood. She spoke to a man named Ellis, who had lived next door to the Whitmore house for decades. He remembered Harold Finch, the previous owner. As quiet, polite, but strange. He never had visitors. Never spoke unless spoken to. But every Thursday, a van would come. Same time, same driver. Always left with the back doors closed. Ellis never thought much of it. I figured he was ordering supplies, maybe medical stuff. He looked sick. The agents traced the van to a defunct delivery company. Records were incomplete, but one name surfaced. Benjamin Cade, a former employee who had been fired for erratic behavior. No known address. No social media. No family. They dug deeper. Benjamin Cade had once been a caretaker at a psychiatric facility. Until he was dismissed for boundary violations, a patient had accused him of locking her in a room for hours, The case was dropped. No charges filed. Marla stared at his file. He knew how to isolate people, how to make them disappear. The team returned to the Whitmore house with cadaver dogs. In the backyard, near the old shed, the dogs alerted. They dug. What they found wasn't a body, but a box. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them. All of Lana. Some smiling, some crying, some asleep. And one staring directly at the camera. Eyes wide, terrified. Agent Tran whispered. She knew. She knew someone was watching. The room wasn't just a prison. It was a stage. And someone had been documenting every moment. The photographs changed everything. They weren't just evidence. They were a confession. Someone had watched Lana. Someone had documented her suffering. And someone had kept those images hidden for years. Agent Riley Tran studied each photo carefully. She aged in these, she said. You can see it. Her face changes. This wasn't days. This was months, maybe years. Detective Marla Jensen felt the weight of every image. Someone wanted to remember her, or control her, or both. They began searching for anyone who might have seen something. Anything. A former neighbor, Mr. Darnell, came forward. He was in his 80s now, nearly blind, but his memory was sharp. I used to hear humming, he said. Soft, like a lullaby, coming from the house. But no one lived there. Not officially. Another witness, a teenage girl named Sophie, had once broken into the backyard on a dare. I saw a light, she said, in the basement window. It flickered, like someone was moving. Sophie never told anyone. She was scared. I thought if I said something, he'd come for me. The he was never named, but everyone seemed to know who they meant. Marla and the agents compiled a list of former residents, delivery workers, utility technicians. Anyone who had entered the house in the past 2 decades. One name kept resurfacing, Caleb Rourke, a handyman who had worked on the property multiple times. He had no criminal record, but his background was murky. No stable address. No known relatives. They tracked him down to a trailer park outside Elmswood. Caleb was thin, jittery, and evasive. When asked about the Whitmore house, he froze. I just fixed pipes, he said. I didn't go in the basement. But his phone records told a different story. He had called Harold Finch dozens of times, always late at night, and once he had sent a text. She's getting louder. You need to do something. Agent Mathers leaned in. What did you mean by that? Caleb's hands trembled. I didn't hurt her. I swear. I didn't know what else to do. The team searched Caleb's trailer. Inside, they found tools, receipts, and a notebook. The notebook contained sketches, rooms, locks, vents, and one page with a chilling note. If she screams again, I'll have to seal the vent. Marla closed the notebook. He knew. He was part of it, but Caleb wasn't the mastermind. He was a pawn. Someone else had orchestrated this. Someone who had stayed invisible. Someone who had made sure Lana was never found. Until now. The deeper they dug, the more the story unraveled. And the more it pointed to someone who had never been named. Not in reports, not in interviews, not in whispers, but his presence lingered like smoke in every corner of the case. Agent Cole Mathers called him the Nameless One, a shadow behind the curtain, someone who orchestrated everything but never stepped into the light. They began cross-referencing every name connected to Harold Finch, Caleb Rourke, and Benjamin Cade. One anomaly emerged, a man listed only as J. Monroe on a delivery invoice dated 2008. No first name. No ID. No signature. Agent Riley Tran traced the invoice to a warehouse in a neighboring town. The manager remembered Monroe. He was quiet, always wore gloves, never looked you in the eye. Gave me the creeps. The warehouse had security footage. Old, grainy, but usable. Monroe appeared in 3 separate videos. Same posture, same gloves, same van. But his face was always turned away. Marla Jensen stared at the footage. He knew where the cameras were. He knew how to stay invisible. They ran facial recognition. Nothing. No match. No record. It was as if Monroe didn't exist. Then came a tip. A former psychiatric nurse, now retired, contacted the FBI. She had worked at the same facility where Benjamin Cade had been employed. She remembered a man who visited often. Never as staff, never as family. He said he was a researcher, she recalled. But he never showed credentials. He asked strange questions about isolation, about silence. She remembered his voice, calm, cold. He said silence was the purest form of control. The agents found a visitor log. One entry matched her memory. J. Monroe, independent researcher. No contact info, no affiliation. They searched deeper. Monroe had appeared in scattered records. Always briefly, always vaguely. A donation to a private school. A rental agreement for a cabin. A subscription to a psychology journal. But never enough to build a profile. Until they found the cabin. It was tucked deep in the woods, miles from the nearest road. Inside it, shelves of books on behavioral control, soundproofing materials, and a single photograph. Lana, sitting on the edge of a bed, staring at the floor. Marla picked up the photo. He was here. He watched her. He documented her. But there was no Monroe, no fingerprints, no trace. Only a name carved into the wall, barely visible beneath layers of dust. I am the quiet. The cabin was silent, but the walls spoke volumes. Every object inside told a story. Of control, of obsession, of a girl who had once lived in the shadows. Agent Riley Tran stood by the window, staring into the woods. He's gone, she said. But he left everything behind. Like he wanted us to find it. Detective Marla Jensen wasn't convinced. Or he wanted us to think we'd won. The investigation reached its final stage. DNA from the cabin matched Lana Whitmore. The journal, the photographs, the drawing, all hers. But there was no body. No final proof of death. Only silence. Then, a call came in. A woman had checked into a shelter 2 states away. She refused to give her name. She didn't speak, but she wore a pink plastic bracelet. Faded, cracked, but unmistakable. Marla and the agents drove overnight. When they arrived, the woman was sitting alone, staring at a wall. Her hair was long, tangled. Her eyes were distant. But when Marla knelt beside her and whispered, "Lana?" The woman blinked. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. But she reached out slowly and took Marla's hand. It was her. The reunion was quiet. No cameras. No press. Just a moment of fragile peace. Lana was taken to a recovery center. She didn't talk for weeks, but she listened. She watched. And one day, she wrote a single sentence on a piece of paper. He said silence would protect me, but it only made me disappear. The case was closed, but the scars remained. Harold Finch was never found. J. Monroe vanished without a trace. Caleb Rourke was charged with conspiracy and obstruction. Benjamin Cade was declared mentally unfit for trial. And Lana Whitmore, began to heal. She never returned to Elmswood. She never spoke publicly. But every year, on the day she was found, a letter arrived at the FBI office. No return address, no signature, just 3 words. I remember everything.